Well, good afternoon, everybody out there in virtual land. Welcome to AASB's second Regional State Board of Education webinar series. And it is our first one, of course, with District 1 member Jackie Zeigler. Welcome, Jackie.
Well, thank you so much. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us all to be together, even if it is, as you say, virtually and remotely.
Well, and of course, this is our staff developed plan with the cooperation, of course, of the state board, since we had to cancel our state board advocacy day, of course, due to COVID in the fall. We had such a successful program in 2019 that we worked with the board. They're like, by all means, do this in 2020. And of course, with spacing, social distancing, and masking, we just didn't think it was actually doable. But we came up with this instead, and we're having a virtual meeting with our state board meetings, state board members one-on-one. Hopefully we will be back to doing this in the fall in our regular format. And if you're out there listening and haven't been able to attend one of those, I strongly encourage you to do so. Jackie and I were visiting before we began the broadcast, and we talked about how nice it was actually to sit and have a meal with somebody and talk about issues and common concerns. So hopefully we'll be back doing that in the fall of this year. In case you don't know, your state board member, if you're from District 1, is a former educator, 37 years as a teacher, assistant principal, principal, and of course, as a teacher trainer at Spring Hill College. You were an adjunct professor. She has incredible credentials because she's done it right. Mrs. Zeigler was the principal of Mary Austin Elementary School when it received its Blue Ribbon Award. And of course, we know that that's very prestigious in that national contest. And of course, she is obviously well credentialed to have that position. She has a BS and MA in elementary education, and of course, certification in administration and supervision, again, from the University of South Alabama. So anything else about your background, Jackie, that you want to share with the folks that I didn't cover?
No, I think that as far as my, there's many a story to be told about the adventures along the way and my being coaxed down from Tuscaloosa down to my first venture down here on Dauphin Island when there was no bridge, but that's a long story. So I'll hold on. That'll be in the fall at the next dinner table. How about that?
That's a great one. Well, in addition to serving on the state board, though, you also have the title of vice president of the board, which means, and I'm saying this, not you, that she has the distinct pleasure of being able to preside over the board meetings when the governor's not there. But sometimes that is a task akin to maybe herding cats sometimes. It is a challenging position. So she does a great job in that position, but she has to keep those meetings running and the questions going. So
and it is difficult when when someone wishes to speak and you're not really in the same room. When you have some people in the room you've got to watch, and then you're trying to cue in on those out on the screen, and then there's some that are just calling in on phone. So sometimes it, as you say, you feel like I lost somebody. Where did they go? But it is an adventure, but it's at least we're all together, and that's
well, it is, and we've shown that we find again new ways to do some of the things we have.
Right.
So speaking of trying to be inclusive in this, we've got about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to have our conversation and questions. Hopefully, I will ask the questions you school board members and superintendents have, but in the event that we do not, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and we hope that we will get to it. If by chance we do not get to it, Jackie has said, please email me and we'll make that information available. It is on the state board website. You can look at her picture, name, and click a link that will allow you to email her. So by all means, follow up. But if not, you know how to find AASB. We'll make sure we'll get that question to you with an answer. So let's start off and talk a little bit about how you looked at education as a principal and teacher and what has changed now that you're sitting on the State Board of Education.
I think what really was in the beginning, besides finding out of all the, different aspects of it, of course, our responsibilities are policy and fiduciary oversight. But with that, you always have your heart for those in the classroom. So that I like that aspect where, there is opportunities for me to bring that back to the table, shall we say, to remind them that we're not just in Montgomery, we're not just, these 9 people sitting at a on a dais in Montgomery, but that everything we do rolls down or rolls up, but comes back and impacts the children and those at the local level. And that, I think, is always a good reminder. You might have, maybe you haven't noted, but in our work session, I asked Charles Krill that he actually put up pictures of kids in the room so that we always will remember why we're there. And if we can answer every time we do something, is it in the best interest of the children, then at least, we're on the right track. So that, I think, was important, is and remains very important to everything I do.
Well, anything that surprised you about serving on the state board? I know this isn't your first term, but yeah, I think having watched other board members go through this, I think there's some surprises that come with holding that. It's a constitutional office, but such a public office.
Right, and realizing that that small distance between the Gordon Persons Building and the State House is one that at times feels like it's miles in duration rather than just a short jaunt across the street. But that probably was my biggest surprise about that, the need to keep that communication going with our legislators, that we can never just sit back and assume they know, or I wish that they, we need to talk to them. And this should be from all the school boards, from, at the local level. Always keep your legislators, phone, email, whatever way of communication. It's critical so they know what is going on and what needs to be done.
All right, because we're just gonna, Lisa's doing the happy dance, she's in charge of advocacy, wants to make sure that our school board members engage in advocacy, but that really is a difference in our state than I see in some other states, that our legislature and state board, sometimes it almost feels like they're rivals in terms of setting education policy, and we need to work a little bit more cohesively together. The legislature certainly has its own ideas on how things should be done, doesn't it?
Right. And anytime you communicate with each other, that sort of helps negate that disconnect, because then, they can explain, from their point of view, and we can explain from ours. And that always is a win-win. Again, you never assume that they know from where we're coming or what are our needs. You've got our communication. It's probably our biggest failure in every part of being in the, as a public official. We always have to do better and can always improve.
Well, and the illusion of thinking we've achieved that, and then somehow the message still doesn't get out.
That's
So
right.
speaking of communication, one of the ways the state board communicates with the legislature, which is getting ready to begin next week, is of course through its budget priorities, the budget proposal it sends to the governor, and of course then the governor incorporates those issues and sends to the legislature. What would be your priorities, you and the state board's priorities, if you were writing the budget? What would you like to see prioritized?
Well, I think with the anytime that we can get more money down to the local levels and into the teachers' hands, I think, I'm grateful that we're able to get more money into the National Board Certified Teachers. I think with this training that we're asking of them to do with letters, people forget how much we ask of teachers to do on their own time. If nothing else, we need to give them the stipend that offsets the cost of daycare, child care. We need to understand that, traveling to different opportunities for continuing ed is expensive in the car. So anytime we can add funding to where it can actually get into the hands to offset some of the things that of which we are asking our teachers, I think is, and also it also sort of gives them a sense that we are obviously knowledgeable about all the hard work and hours that goes in, and it's sort of like giving them that pat on the back, like, thank you, we appreciate it, and at least hear some kind of recognition for their hard work. Because you know, continuing ed is not easy. So, you know, anytime we can, you know, do that, I think it's important. I think we're doing well with our career tech. I think things are, well, of course, you know, things have always been a little bit off because of COVID, but I think we're moving in a totally great direction for career tech. I think people are understanding again that there are many, many opportunities out there for our kids to become involved. So that kind of funding is very, very important. You know, the readings, you know, with the adoption of the reading coming up, we need to make sure that our reading specialists are well trained and that their opportunities are out there. Of course, ARI, AMSTI, you know, you can go on and on about all the importance. And so it is also critical that those at the local levels communicate to us what are their areas of need and importance. And I know they have their different organizations that they may feel speaks for their need. I always think, let me know what's going on. What is it that is important? Where are we dropping the ball? Where can we suffice and maybe, you know, supplement, or maybe too much money is going into this and might need to be redirected. But the budget looks good. I don't know as far as when they're going to be meeting on that exactly. You know, they're just now coming back. I think, you know, like the JAG program, the teachers in residence, there's a lot of opportunities out there that we keep a finger on and try to maintain it, or at least supplement it. Sometimes we might need to ask for an increase, but those are very vital, important concepts that need to continue.
Well, that's good, and I think the legislature, I think, has been responsive in many areas to what you want done. But I love what you said, is that, you know, you want input from your constituents in your area, and certainly ASB likes to carry the ball and do what it can. But what is so vital about that connection when you hear from local boards and superintendent is that they can give you the story, they can give you the example of why we need more funding, or why this didn't quite work the way it was intended to work. You know, sometimes
Exactly.
aggressive intentions.
Yeah, of mice and men. Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, with the ESSER money and the CARES Act money, you know, it's like you're getting this bundle of money, but we have to be cognizant that it might be our last bundle. There might be another bundle coming, but you never can assume another bundle's coming down. So you need to make the best decisions on using that bundle of money. And I'm sure they're hearing about it as much as I am, as far as like there's these new HVAC, you know, that might not be the proper method, but now they have an ultraviolet system that goes in that kills more germs and all this. So those are things that might be a lot of money, but yet the long term might be just, you know, the cat's meow when you think about keeping the health of everybody, being your, you know, the students and the teachers and the custodians, and the line goes down. But and then there, you know, the needs at the schools are so tremendous. You know, it's just, you know, how do you, I mean, that's what we deal with all the time with our budget, is the needs are so tremendous. How are they best, you know, delineated out, line item out, to do the greatest impact that best addresses what's best for our kids and teachers.
Well, and to say that, you know, talk about the needs, having watched the state board wrestle with these issues really for 35 years, I have the pendulum goes back and forth, whether you ask for, okay, X amount of money is here, you know, we're going to only ask for what we know is available, or do we ask for everything we need? So we send the message that you know, our needs outpace what's available. And I think
Right.
reasonable, recently kind of had done the happy medium, you know.
Yes. And I think it is important to let them know. And plus, if they come back and cut it, then you're still hopefully have enough. But that it is a never ending, you know, problem in some areas. I mean, it's always an issue. Do we have enough funding to bring in the brightest and the best of our teachers? Are we doing what needs to be done to bring in those specialized teachers, of which we are, you know, not enticing for whatever reason? And what can we do to make that more of a viable situation? And you hate to always think it's money, but if money is part of it, well, let's have a realistic talk about it, and, you know, and let's deal with that. And what are the things that, you know, and we have to also remember how important it is to understand that you need to remove yourself from a certain setting and actually get into the schools. If you don't walk those halls of all the different schools in different districts, and not as a photo op or an opportunity to, you know, just see the shining part, but to really look at what's going on, time does get away from you and you forget how wonderful things are going on in our schools, what tremendous teaching and learning is going on, and to go in saying what is working for you, and then we want to keep that, but what is it out, what is your needs, what do you see that is your greatest need that would help in our kids? And be that, you know, some of them are going like Mobile County has the specialized schools, you know, where they have the different identification of school. What is it that can help us move? And, you know, transportation is always a huge difficulty. And bless their hearts, in the rural area, I bet they could just scream sometimes, you know, that fleet problem. So, you know, when you listen, you just, pardon me?
And that's a lot of your district has, you know,
Oh.
large systems.
Oh, yeah.
Transportation's huge.
And one thing, I'm sort of going to go back to what you asked me earlier, and that I sort of dropped the ball on. One of the things by being on the state school board that never really hit home is I have now learned about, instead of my little world down here, I've learned about the whole state. I've learned what are the different aspects and what are the greater, traveling those rural roads and going and seeing has opened my eyes. And I think that has really been one of the greater impacts. I'm seeing the state as a whole rather than my own little world. And I think that has been a benefit for me. And I think the chatty Cathys that we now have on the board, I think we're getting to know each other pretty well as far as, you know, what's going on. And we need to communicate everything across the entire state. And I think that's becoming better.
Good, excellent point. And I think that's one of the things that, and we're good. We focus on our district, our school system, but there's so many differences across the state. That's of course why, you know, that's the mantra of AASB, local control, because, you know,
Yes.
one size fits all doesn't really fit all. And I think, you know, we're becoming more effective in people realizing that. So that's good. All right, one of the things I can say, you mentioned the CARES funding, and to pick up the legislature, if I picked up a vibe based on the hearings yesterday, is that there are a lot of questions asked on what are local school systems spending, you know, the CARES and the ESSER money on, you know, because I think the legislature, it sounds like it wants to craft the budget around where the funding is already available. You know, and in some cases there might be some overlap, but they had some suggestions. The honorables had some suggestions for the board in terms of perhaps providing out some templates or ideas on effective practice to use the CARES money, because it is fairly restricted. So that might be. Well, and it's not like we don't have enough needs with our state funds, because we have several initiatives that may have started in the legislature but are now being run by the State Department of Education, and primarily is the Literacy Act. And I know you
Yeah,
have some strong feelings, and if I'm correct, aren't you also the State Board liaison on the Literacy Task Force?
I am, and I have attended all of the meetings. Well, not all. I missed a couple of them, but I really have been quite careful in being able to attend them. And of course, now with Zoom, it's almost perfect as far as being able to make them. Because again, when you get together and you actually speak to those who's what I call boots on the ground, where they're actually with the children and students, that and the opportunity to do that back and forth conversation about maybe what works in one area might work in another, or what doesn't work, and a lot of that has really, I think, benefited us and also made us understand that this law is very, I mean, I've read the law I don't know how many times, and every time I read it again, something else pops up at me. It is a very intensive, well intended law, but there's a lot to it and a lot of responsibility. And the ball has already started rolling, and they're going to continue that ball, once it's been implemented, we're off and running. And so with that, and the other thing on the literacy task force, we do have university professors and deans with us, because of course they're going to have to, and they have been upping their programs to do the science of reading to fulfill the letter of the law. So it's again almost an opportunity for us all to work together, to be on the same page, and to figure out what's going to be the best.
Well, and while the state board doesn't have authority to change the legislation, um, what we're hearing, and it doesn't look like there'll be a bill this year. What would you say to educators who have concerns right now about this? And of course, the looming requirement, there's looming requirement next year that the retention piece would fall
Right.
in. What are you hearing?
And,
What would you say?
and that's the one that you hear most about, the concerns. And so with that, the understanding of the professional development out there, the letters, which is the gold standard in my opinion, is one that ball needs to be rolling and rolling now, because it does address the science of reading. It does bring in all those 5 components that actually does what needs to be done to move our kids forward. Granted, are we going to have some difficulty when we come to the 3rd grade retention? Will we have to do waivers? There's still that's part of the possibilities. But we need to start that ball like now. Our kids, we cannot afford not to be moving our kids forward in something that is scientifically based, well researched, and can propel our kids up the rating scale, so to speak. So there's always a few that want to drag feet and thinking, well, let's get it done perfectly before. No, we don't have time to be waiting for perfection. And the other thing we're hearing is, please don't get us started on this road and then change it in another couple of years. If we find something that is the gold standard, that is actually showing, and when we have the opportunity to get the benchmark data and see the progress and to do the assessments that need to be done, let's keep going forward with success, instead of feeling that we always have to double down and do something different.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of time and energy. I would think the focus is important. Certainly, there are different ways to get there, but at least folks have said, or what we're hearing now is, don't expect changes this year. Let's continue to have conversation, and let's look at what the testing says, and what, reassess next year this time.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I understand that part, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to get moving on getting our teachers trained in that professional development. And that, I think, is the ball that I'm pushing mostly. And it's the feedback I'm getting from the teachers that are doing the professional training is, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, but oh my gosh, if I had only known back then what I know now, it's just worth it. And so it's worth it. And that's what I'm very rarely, do you hear that they don't like it once they get into it? Now, sometimes they can't finish it because life gets in the way. Well, we understand that, but I'm talking about the design of the professional development.
Where we're headed. And I certainly appreciate your comments about, stipends. I think I'd like to see us to do better than stipends. Stipends frequently aren't at your daily rate of pay. Let's recognize, what people are doing and what we're asking them to do.
Exactly. And it authenticates that we value them, and they're wanting to become better teachers because then they're doing a better job for the children. And if the children in Mobile County succeed, it's a win-win for the whole state. When they do better in Hale County, it's a win-win for the whole state. When they do better in Connect or whatever, it doesn't matter. When kids succeed, everybody succeeds. And so we've got to double down and then value the teachers, because this time that has spent needs to be paying for their daycare, their time, that we value it. And yeah, stipend is almost like, isn't even worth mentioning. They need to be supplemented. Let's use that word.
All right. Well, let's move on to another issue that the state board has had to dealt with recently. Math textbook adoption kind of had a little wrinkle this year, but we're on the right track. Do we need to change our process? Thoughts, comments on what happened and where we might be headed?
Yes. I think that the process, and I'm embarrassed to say I cannot bring forth the year in which this was brought forth, the textbook law that we're to follow. At the point in time that it was adopted, it might have been fulfilling their need, but now, to me, it's got a couple of flaws, and it's not, it's nothing that we can't fix, but I want as much information to get into the hands of the superintendent so that they can make the greatest, the best decisions when they go these textbooks. Because very well, when these caravans start, it's let me just use the word dog and pony show, and they are coming out with their best bet, and they have their nice hats on, and they're just telling you how great everything is. Well, they can be, if they have the full understanding about what this publishing company has available and does it meet the needs, and besides just, is it good on meeting, is it aligned to the course of study, but those anecdotal notes that is given from the, on each of the publishing is like gold. It's like, I've done it in the classroom where I've tested a child, but when I go back and read my anecdotal records, that really tells me where the areas of progress or the areas of deficiency, then you can start making better decisions, because it's a lot of money, and as much as we hate it, they got to hold on to it for 6, 7, 8 years sometimes. So, and then the other thing that opened our eyes is that, do they offer the virtual opportunities without adding, fees, which is another thing you have to be aware of. And so there's a lot more to it. And so we just didn't, and COVID, of course, brought everything to a roaring halt. So we did get delayed, but we were not going to allow the time, which I'm sorry to say, I know it has an impact at the local schools, but if we're going to do it, we got to do it right.
Well, that's good. And from my understanding is that there might be looking at changes to the state textbook law going forward to be more in line with what the state board wants to do.
Right. And that comes from what we're hearing from our superintendents. What is it that they need so that their district, because to me, if we're going to have a state board, a State Department committee for textbooks, and they do all the work and they do all the necessary, but yet all that work is not given to the people to be making the decisions in a timely manner, you know. And then you also have to remember there's some districts that are dependent upon us to do the best job possible because maybe they might not have the extra money or the resources to bring in another group to reassess and redesign and redo all that. So, you know, it's a huge responsibility. And with that, the little caveats in the law that sort of handhold you need to be addressed. And I'm not going to drop the ball on that one. This one is really important to me.
Well, good. Glad to hear it. I think
So
that'll be
Lisa, I'll be talking to you.
okay. One of the things the state board tackled recently or put out for comment is its waiver, its SEEA waiver, and of course, tied. You want any comments on that of the process?
No, but I think that the process with the you know, you have to come back, and sometimes you have to come back and put forth a bit of a change, you know, just say as we were moving along at that point in time, it was going well, but then since we've been looking at it, we might need to punt a little bit on this part. And, you know, it sort of wonders how with the new State Department, I mean, the new U.S. Department of Education and the new secretary, there's going to be changes. There's no doubt about it. It's just the nature of the beast. So with that, what about the assessment? What about the, you know, maybe the new format for the ESSA? What about the new regs and requirements and policies and laws that might be implemented that will again impact us, that might change our movement going forward? But all we can do right now until we find about those changes is continue on the course. And with that, you know, our strategic plan, we have not been able to meet with our retreat. You know, for some reason, to me, a retreat when you're, you know, not even in the same room sort of just didn't fly in my mind. But I think we might get to the point where we might just have to bite the bullet and meet virtually to just get some things talked about, of which one will be textbooks, in my opinion, definitely a strategic plan, relooking at certain aspects. So with that, and especially with our 2 new board members, so that will be nice. And that's also my first time when our first retreat is when you really get to bond, because, you know, you're in an informal setting and it's a win-win in many ways.
Oh, we think they're very important. I mean, it's easier to work together as a team if you know each other, you know, on at least more than just a very professional level. You kind of understand where somebody's coming from when they share their interest.
And if I may interrupt, and I have to say that when we were all together, when we came for, you know, the opportunity to meet with the school, you know, the different boards, I felt that was a wonderful environment where we all became, and excuse me for using this sort of vernacular, but I think we became more human. To, you know, that we are, you know, human beings, that we are wanting to hear what's best, and doing it that we looked as we were a team, and we are a team. We really are. I mean, we might be very strong in our opinions in many ways, but we really are a team. And retreats and advocacy days and all this really helps, I think, in bringing us closer together. So thank you.
Yeah, well, good. Good to know that. And one of the things, I know we're looking at the clock. We've got
just sorry. Yeah.
Minutes there. No.
Just, you know me.
You know, we've got a few more, but of course, the impact of COVID. You know, thoughts on learning loss. You know, some of the issues coming up. You know, what we need to do.
You know, obviously, this year, I can't imagine that, you know, Governor Ivey has extended the her decree until, was it March 6th? Something like that, where she extended it.
Yeah, the mask order, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's going, and if I was a betting woman, which I'm not, I bet that she's going to extend it one more to get them through the end of the year. I think, like with Maggie at the university, they sort of eliminated spring break because they don't want the kids to go out and, you know, and do what college students do and end the year earlier. I think by having the opportunity to have a fluid calendar and do what's best for your district is imperative. I think we need to understand. What worries me is that, you know, there's some that never enrolled their children in pre-K, K and 1. And I understand that. I could see how I wouldn't think a 5-year-old could learn via Zoom or whatever, you know, so you understand from where they're coming. And I worry a lot when we weren't having our kids, you know, in the side of a teacher, because they're the ones that put their eyes on them. They're the ones that can pick up on maybe something that's troubling them. You know, when you're walking around and they're working a problem or you're having a discussion, you make mental notes about, oh, I need to, you know, Johnny is having a little difficulty here or whatever. You miss that, and kids need to be together. They need that socialization. I need that socialization, and with that, the impact is going to be something that we won't know for many, many years of what has happened, as far as not only mental health wise, social wise, you know, academic wise. It's so multifaceted that I worry about our kids. And, you know, are they at home? You know, we would make sure they got their food. We would make sure that they had clean clothes. We could always direct, you know, somebody that we thought maybe they might need to do a home visit. You know, things like that just wear on my heart. And so the quicker, and it won't happen this year, but I pray that we can get our kids back, because hot teaching is the way they learn. You know, being with that teacher, the teacher having that relationship. You know, it's just, even in high school, I mean, the kids need it. You know, not being together for homecoming and all those fun aspects of it. It just breaks my heart. It really does.
Yeah, it's been tough. It really has been. But I think that some of the points you made certainly underscore the approach that the state board and state superintendent took, is that they have to be community-based decisions. You know,
That's
that
right.
there's not a state level, and there's been criticism of that.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, but ultimately, you know, you've got to do, you know, work with your community about what will work in your area. Well,
I probably get more emails from parents, community, everybody saying, why doesn't the state school board make a policy to make sure everybody, you know, and nope. That's a local decision. That's why you have a vote on your local school boards. That's why you need to be communicating with them, because who knows their kids best but those at that local level. And I'm a huge believer in that.
Well, and that's a great point. I'm glad you shared that with the folks who have joined us, that you get pressure on the state level to make uniform policies, to do the one size fits all. So what, you know, looking at that from the other side of the question, what kind of information do you need from your local school board members and superintendents? You know, what kind of communication would help you in your job? What's the best way of doing that?
Well, it is very beneficial, for instance, that when they listen to the board meetings, but particularly the work sessions, and they know enough because of the way it works, that it's the work session that you talk out and you figure out that you vote on the next meeting. You know, some people from our community always gets it backwards, but when they know, like, for instance, the big topic is FAFSA, and I have heard much from my district about their feelings on it. How do I know unless y'all let me know? I heard about textbooks, and so now coming up, what are those things that about which you're hearing at the work session sort of should be giving pause about, have y'all lost your minds and help us here? Or, yay, you're on the right track. It just, again, communication. And having said that, it is important that we do hear from you. So I do applaud and you know, let me tell you, the parents and everybody else contacts me. So I would love to hear from, you know, things that I can assist in any way, and that's my job. I'm there to help them And, if they have an idea that they might need me to explore or whatever, I'm their person.
Well, that's true. Sometimes folks have maybe not gotten the answer they want at the local level, but I'm surprised at the number of people who bypass the local level and go straight to
Oh,
state
yeah.
board, Dr. Mackey on things,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been told that Johnny stepped on Susie's shoe going up the steps, and what am I going to do about that bullying situation? I go, okay. Okay. But, but in their world, some people just need to get it off their chest and just think somebody's listening to them. And so I just always direct them back to where they need to be. And, sometimes if I'm the sounding board and they can yell and scream via email or on the phone, that's okay. Let it bounce. And then once they get their anger or their frustration or whatever off, then you can guide them to the right direction, to whom they should speak and how to solve it or whatever.
All right. Well, is there any topics we didn't cover or talk about that you'd like to mention or bring up?
I know they're talking about, one of the other things I'm hearing about are the vaccines for teachers. And I really wish we had been able to hear from Dr. Harris. So I don't know where that stands as far as what's coming up next. I know they're in that special grouping, but with that, how the best way of doing it and how it's going to be done is something that I'm still trying to find out.
They're working on the plan, and I will share with you what Dr. Mackey shared with superintendents in a webinar. Some folks question how come some teachers are getting it already as opposed to others. And the vaccines were distributed to county departments of health,
Yeah.
and were distributed to hospitals and other places. The county has to follow the state protocols pretty rigidly and get permission to go to the next group. Your private hospitals, or your not private, but your hospitals have a little bit more flexibility. If they have leftover after treating first responders, they can go to educators. And so that is how it has happened in various places across the state. So that's a good thing. It's not an inconsistent thing. And we have a question in our chat box.
Asking about whether the legislation on textbook will happen this session.
Okay, will the textbook legislation happen this session, do you believe?
No, I think it's going to take a while of doing some homework, also by getting, what process needs to be done, how to get a resolution going, and all those particulars. And I don't see that getting done, during this session. But that doesn't mean I'm not working toward it. But no guarantees. How about that? That's not a non-commit answer. I'm sorry, but and if anybody wishes to give me some ideas, I'm all open. But or what areas they think needs to be corrected or kept, both ways.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that rounds up our time. It has been absolutely delightful. Your heart as an elementary teacher and principal comes through, and I know that you would certainly welcome those calls, emails, but folks, be nice. Your state board, your board members too, so you know what it's like to get the angry phone call. So
I have never had an angry, disrespectful, maybe frustrated, but always respectful. But it is what it is. And there's times I'm sure that they just keep butting their heads against the wall and thinking, oh, please help me, So, but anyhow, please do, if any of questions pop up, email, you or Lisa can forward them to me, or they can come directly to me. So thank you. And again, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no. Well, thank you for your willingness to do this. And also thank you folks out in District 1 and in school board land out there. Thank you for your willingness to spend lunchtime with us to learn about how the state board operates. Have a good day. Thank you.
And thank you again.